My ex-husband stole my inheritance during our divorce, and I fought to get it back. I spent 22 years building a life with a man I trusted completely. We raised 3 children together, weathered financial storms, and celebrated countless milestones. I thought I knew him. I thought he loved me. Then I discovered he'd been having an affair for 5 years. The divorce that followed was brutal, but I survived. I picked up the pieces of my shattered life and started over. I thought the worst was behind me. I was wrong. Months after the divorce was finalized, I discovered he'd hidden a significant asset from the courts. My inheritance from my grandmother. He transferred it to a secret account and claimed it was his. When I confronted him, he told me I didn't need it and he deserved it more. I was furious, betrayed, and ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. The day I discovered my husband's affair, my world collapsed. I was 45 years old, a mother of 3, and I thought I had a solid marriage. I'd been with Edwin for over 2 decades. We'd built a life together. A home, a family, a future. I never imagined he could betray me, but he did. He'd been seeing another woman for 5 years. 5 years of lies, of secret meetings, of coming home to me and pretending everything was fine. When I confronted him, he didn't even try to deny it. He told me he was unhappy and had needed something more. I was devastated, but I didn't let him see me break. I held myself together for my children, my home, my future. The divorce was a nightmare. We fought over everything: the house, the savings, the kids. He had better lawyers, more resources, and a ruthless determination to win. In the end, I walked away with less than I deserved, but I was free. I was finally free of the lies and the betrayal. I thought the worst was behind me. I was wrong. A few months after the divorce was finalized, I was going through old boxes in my basement. I found a stack of financial documents I'd never seen before. My grandmother's estate had been settled years ago, and I'd received a modest inheritance. But as I looked closer, I realized something was missing. A significant portion of the money was gone. I'd never touched it. I started digging. I called the bank, contacted the estate lawyer, and pieced together the truth. Edwin had transferred my inheritance to a secret account during the divorce proceedings. He'd hidden it from the courts, lied to the lawyers, and claimed it was his. He'd stolen from me. He'd taken what was rightfully mine and used it to fund his new life. I felt the anger rise in my chest, hot and suffocating. He'd taken everything: my trust, my marriage, my future, and now he'd taken my inheritance. I was done being the victim. I was done letting him win. I called my lawyer, a sharp, determined woman named Margaret. She listened to my story without interrupting, her face unreadable. "Ms. Bennett," she said when I finished, "this is a clear case of fraud. Your ex-husband concealed assets during the divorce proceedings. That's illegal. You have a strong case. How long will it take?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It could take months," she admitted, "but we'll get your money back. I promise you that." I felt a surge of hope. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a fighting chance. The legal battle began. Edwin hired a new lawyer, a slick, expensive man who tried to argue that the money was a gift. Margaret countered with evidence of the transfer, the timing, and the deception. It was exhausting. Every day brought new documents, new depositions, new arguments. I was still healing from the divorce, still trying to rebuild my life, and the stress was taking its toll. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't let Edwin win. I started therapy. Dr. Morrison helped me process the anger, the betrayal, and the grief. She helped me see that I wasn't the villain in this story. I was the victim of a man who'd taken advantage of my trust. "Your ex-husband made a choice to deceive you," she said one afternoon. "That's not your fault. You deserve justice. You deserve to reclaim what's yours." I started to believe her. The day of the hearing arrived. I sat in the courtroom, my hands clasped in my lap, my heart pounding. Edwin was there too, sitting across the room with his lawyer. He didn't look at me. He didn't acknowledge my existence. Margaret presented our case methodically. She showed the documents, the evidence, the timeline of the deception. She argued that Edwin had concealed assets in bad faith and violated the terms of the divorce agreement. Edwin's lawyer tried to argue that I'd neglected the inheritance and forfeited my claim, but Margaret was relentless. She countered with proof that I'd never been notified of the transfer, that I'd been deliberately kept in the dark. The judge listened carefully. When the hearing ended, she said she'd deliver her ruling in a week. I spent that week in a state of suspended animation. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't focus on anything. My children tried to comfort me, but I was too lost in my own thoughts. When the day of the ruling arrived, I sat in the courtroom, my hands shaking. The judge read her decision. She'd found in my favor. Edwin had concealed assets in bad faith. He was ordered to return my inheritance and cover my legal fees. I felt tears stream down my face. I'd won. I'd actually won. Edwin's face crumpled. He looked at me, his eyes filled with rage. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "I'll make sure you regret this." I didn't respond. I just walked out of the courtroom, my head held high. I'd won, and nothing Edwin could do would ever take that away from me. The victory in court was sweet, but it wasn't the end. Edwin appealed. As I'd expected, he was determined to drag this out, to exhaust me financially and emotionally. He thought if he made the process painful enough, I'd give up. He didn't know me as well as he thought. The legal battle continued for another 6 months. I spent countless hours with Margaret, preparing for hearings, reviewing documents, and strategizing. It was exhausting, expensive, and emotionally draining, but I refused to back down. I'd come too far to let him win. During those months, I focused on rebuilding my life. I reconnected with old friends, joined a book club, and started painting again. something I hadn't done in years. I'd lost so much of myself during my marriage, and I was finally finding my way back. My children were my anchor. They were grown now, living their own lives. But they rallied around me. My daughter, Helena, called me every day. My sons, Leonard and Francis, visited on weekends. They were angry at their father, not just for what he'd done to me, but for what he'd done to our family. "He's going to lose everything," Leonard said one evening. "And he deserves it." I nodded, but I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. The appeal was denied. The judge upheld the original ruling, and Edwin was forced to pay the full amount of my inheritance, plus interest and legal fees. It was a complete victory, but I didn't feel like celebrating. I just felt relief. A few weeks later, I received a letter from Edwin. It was written in his familiar, arrogant hand, but the words were different. He wasn't apologizing. He was blaming. "You've ruined me," he wrote. "You've taken everything. I hope you're proud of yourself." I read the letter twice, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to respond, to tell him that he'd ruined himself. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely. In the end, I chose the latter. He'd already taken too much of my time and energy. I wasn't going to give him any more. I started to heal in ways I hadn't expected. The money was important, but it wasn't the most important thing. What mattered was that I'd stood up for myself. I'd fought for what was right. I'd refused to let him take everything from me. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping other women who'd been through similar experiences. I shared my story, offered support, and let them know they weren't alone. It was humbling and healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. "You're so strong," one woman said to me. "I don't know how you did it." I smiled, but I didn't feel strong. I felt like I'd just survived. And sometimes, that was enough. One evening, I received a call from my ex-mother-in-law, a woman I hadn't spoken to since the divorce. She was crying. "Edwin is in trouble," she said. "His mistress left him. He lost his job. He's in debt. He's a mess." I listened without interrupting. I didn't feel sorry for him. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt nothing. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. And I meant it, but I wasn't going to rescue him. I wasn't going to be his savior. I continued to build my new life. I used part of the inheritance to buy a small cottage near the coast, a place I'd always dreamed of owning. It needed work, but I didn't mind. I painted the walls, planted a garden, and filled the rooms with books and art. It was modest, but it was mine. I started writing again, something I'd always loved but had abandoned during my marriage. I wrote about my experiences, my journey, my healing. I didn't plan to publish it, I just needed to get the words out. I started dating again. It was terrifying and awkward, but I met a man named Gerald who was kind and patient, and completely unafraid of my baggage. He'd been through his own struggles, and he understood the importance of trust. "I don't want to fix you," he said one evening. "I just want to be with you." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. It was the first time in years I'd felt truly hopeful. I thought about Edwin sometimes. I wondered if he'd ever find peace. I wondered if he'd ever understand what he'd done, but I didn't dwell on it. He was part of my past, not my future. I'd been through hell, but I'd come out the other side. I was stronger, wiser, and more whole than I'd ever been. The year after the legal battle ended was one of transformation. I'd spent so long fighting for my marriage, fighting through the divorce, fighting for my inheritance, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to simply live. But slowly, I started to remember. I spent weekends at my cottage by the coast, watching the waves crash against the shore and feeling the salt air fill my lungs. I planted roses in the garden, painted the shutters a soft shade of blue, and filled the rooms with the things I loved. It wasn't a big house, but it was mine. Every corner of it reflected who I was. I continued volunteering at the women's shelter. It had become more than just a way to heal. It had become a calling. I'd meet women who had lost everything, who had been betrayed by the people they trusted most, and I'd see myself in their eyes. I'd offer them the same hope I'd been given. Sometimes I'd get updates from them, messages about new jobs, new homes, new beginnings. Each one reminded me why I'd fought so hard. One evening, I received a call from my daughter, Helena. Her voice was hesitant, careful. "Mom, I need to tell you something. It's about Dad." I felt my heart tighten. "What about him?" "He's been trying to reach out. He wants to see us. He says he's changed. He says he's sorry." I was silent for a long moment. I'd spent years wishing Edwin would apologize, would acknowledge the pain he'd caused. Now that he was trying, I didn't know what to feel. "What do you want to do?" I asked finally. "I don't know," Helena admitted. "Part of me wants to give him a chance. Part of me is too angry." I thought about my own journey. The anger, the grief, the long road to forgiveness. I'd learned that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about letting go of the weight so you could move forward. "Whatever you decide," I said, "I'll support you. But you don't owe him anything. He has to earn your trust back, and that takes time." Helena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Thanks, Mom." I needed to hear that. A few weeks later, my sons came to visit. They'd been talking to their father too, and they were conflicted. He'd been going to therapy, they said. He'd been trying to understand why he'd done what he did. He wanted to make amends. "He asked me to tell you he's sorry," Leonard said. He said he knows he doesn't deserve your forgiveness, but he wanted you to know. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace. Edwin's apology didn't undo the past. It didn't erase the pain, but it was something. A small acknowledgement that he'd finally seen the damage he'd caused. I thought about the woman I'd been before, the one who'd trusted too easily, who'd given everything and received nothing in return. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who would never let anyone take advantage of her again. I wrote Edwin a letter, not a long one. Just a few sentences. I received your message. I'm glad you're getting help. I hope you find the peace you're looking for. I've moved on with my life. I wish you well. I didn't offer forgiveness. I wasn't ready, but I offered something else. A release. A letting go of the anger that had been weighing me down. The years passed. My children grew older, built their own lives, their own families. I continued to visit the cottage, continued to volunteer, continued to heal. One evening, I stood on the porch of my cottage, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Gerald was inside, making dinner. The sounds of laughter drifted through the open window. I thought about everything I'd been through. The betrayal, the divorce, the legal battle, the years of pain, and the long road to healing. I thought about the woman I'd been and the woman I'd become. I'd been through hell, but I'd come out the other side. I was stronger, wiser, and more whole than I'd ever been. Edwin had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, he'd given me something unexpected. He'd given me the courage to start over, to build something new, to trust again. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. The future was mine to shape, and I was ready to embrace it.